Good evening. I want to welcome you to our virtual town hall as we discuss our Return to Learn plan for the fall of this year. My name is Mike Gill, and I have the pleasure of serving Hanover County Public Schools as the Superintendent of Schools. This evening, we are going to discuss some of the many questions that have been submitted over the past 10 to 14 days, as well as have an opportunity for interaction and questions this evening that will be submitted. And we'll go over a little bit more on the format here in just a couple of minutes. I want to begin, though, by thanking you. Thanking you for taking the time out of your busy schedules to engage in this important event. We know that this information is important to you, is critical for the decisions that you will make on behalf of your family as we engage in truly unprecedented times. The task that has been before us since mid-March has truly been monumental and unprecedented in our lifetimes. And I am thankful for all of those who have engaged in this meaningful work to pivot quickly from a fully in-person back through mid-March to remote, to virtual graduations, to planning for the year to come. We keep in mind through all of our planning that our students, our staff, our greater community depends on these decisions. And those who have been making them understand the gravity and the impact that they have for so many. It's a responsibility that we take very seriously. It is one that we often agonize over, understanding that the situation that we are in is fluid, and as a result, we need to be agile and keep the needs of so many in the forefront of our thoughts as we make these decisions. We have to acknowledge that this is a divisive issue. We see that divisiveness in the media. We certainly see it in social media. You can see it by certainly just walking outside of your own door. We know that it is divisive. We also acknowledge that there is no perfect plan. If there was, we certainly would want to implement it, but there is no perfect plan at a perfect time that is perfect for all families. And so it is a delicate balance between meeting the needs of our many stakeholder groups and being responsive and responding appropriately to this rapidly changing situation. But I'm pleased and privileged to work with so many who do exactly that and who have been working diligently for months, often around the clock, to plan and make these important decisions. I've mentioned the words fluid and agile, and those have come to define our work. 2 weeks ago tonight, we had the opportunity to present the Return to Learn plan to the school board for their consideration. And one of the things that we acknowledged and reemphasized time and again is that the plan could and probably would change, maybe even multiple times, before the start of the school year and during the school year. We understand that data changes weekly, daily, sometimes even hourly. The landscape in which we are operating changes equally as quick. Just this afternoon, the governor put new orders in place for Eastern Virginia, and that just demonstrates the changing nature, the changing landscape in which we are operating. As a result, we have to be agile and we have to be able to pivot, often on a moment's notice, but we're prepared to do so. We firmly believe that education is an essential pillar for our community and ultimately a pillar of our democracy. We take that responsibility, again, very seriously. We've had many questions submitted. Over the course of the last week or so, our staff has responded again to over 1,000. And we know as many questions that have been answered, there are many more to come. We also need to just acknowledge up front that we're not going to have all of the answers, and more questions will come not only before now and the start of the school year, but throughout the school year, as these truly are uncharted waters. There is a frequently asked questions and answers site as part of our COVID-19 Return to Learn plan. We hope that you are visiting that. It is updated often, many times daily. And we will continue to add to that as new questions and new answers are submitted and returned. This evening, I want to talk a little bit about the format. You see here joining me our 3 assistant superintendents. Ms. Jennifer Greif is our assistant superintendent for instructional leadership. Anything that covers instruction, she is the chief academic officer and ultimately oversees. Ms. Terry Stone is assistant superintendent for business and operations. And that entails many things, but in terms of what would be important for tonight, it includes such things as technology, our transportation plan, our custodial, and our facilities. Mrs. Mandy Baker is our assistant superintendent for human resources. And in addition to all of our personnel items, she has also led our work on our health plan in conjunction with the Virginia Department of Health and our local health department. You are going to hear from each of them over the course of the next 40 minutes, and they're going to summarize some of the many questions, those most frequently asked over the past 2 weeks. And so that will take us up through the first half of our evening. In the second half, we're going to open up our chat. And again, I want to acknowledge it would be impossible to answer every question, but we're going to do our best to answer as many as possible in the time that we have. We will continue to update our frequently asked questions from now until the beginning of the school year. And we will continue to communicate with you in a variety of ways, through our social media, through our e-connects, through phone calls when appropriate. Finally, on a personal note, I want to thank so many of you for reaching out and for your support over the last many months. Your notes, your phone calls, your well wishes, and your prayers are never taken for granted and are always appreciated and show the strength of our community. With that, we're going to start with our instructional piece, and we'll begin with kind of an overview of what a day would look like, both in the face-to-face and the virtual environment. And then Ms. Greif will discuss some of the frequently asked questions as it pertains to instruction. So with that, Ms. Jennifer Greif.
Thank you, Dr. Gill, and welcome to all of our participants this evening. I'm glad to have the opportunity to speak with you and answer some of your questions. As Dr. Gill said, we are charting waters that we've never seen before, and what I have seen in our community doesn't surprise me in that everyone is focused. Everyone is focused on what is absolutely best for our students. And so that trust and care that we have with our community, for our students, with our staff and faculty is what is really ultimately going to carry us through this fall and into the spring. And so as Dr. Gill said, I want to begin with giving you an overview of what it might look like for our students as they enter into the fall, whether they're in a face-to-face environment or whether they are in an online school. And so before I do that, I do want to acknowledge the very hard work that's been going on with my ILS team. We work together daily, sometimes twice, 3, 4 times a day. And I just wanted to acknowledge the work that they do. Brian Maltby, Nancy Disharoon, Dana Gresham, Diane Brown, Steve Castle, Michael Mudd, and Bob Staley are the ILS team who work up at the school board office. And of course, all of our principals and assistant principals out in the buildings have been working with our families to help them to make some choices that may seem difficult at this point. And so let's start with the full-time face-to-face. And so I'm going to start with our elementary students. And some of the elementary day is going to look very familiar to our students in the face-to-face. It will start a little bit different because, as you'll hear a little bit later from Ms. Stone, transportation is going to be staggered coming into the school. So there's what I call a mushy period at the beginning of the day and a mushy period at the end of the day, where not all of our students will be present in our classrooms quite yet. So some students will arrive a little bit earlier, depart a little bit earlier. Some students will arrive later and depart later. But we do have that core instruction of about 6 hours in all of our settings where all of our students should be in our buildings. So a student, an elementary student who comes in the morning will have some independent work to do, might have some time to talk about their reading with their teacher, would have some tasks that they could complete before the whole group instruction begins. The whole group instruction will always cover our core subjects, literacy and math being at the forefront, especially developmentally, and making sure that in the early parts of the year, we're really tapping into what our students know and have retained from the last school year so that we can build upon those and fill in any learning gaps. Our students will go through the day. There will be movement in the classroom, but it will be very, very structured. We are aiming to keep that social distancing space. And so the instructional strategies, our teachers are working on some innovative ways to do what's best for kids instructionally while still working within our health plan. Our students won't travel out for art or PE or music, but rather those teachers will come join them in the classroom to provide some lessons as they go through the day. This will also provide our teachers with some opportunities for planning and for breaks. We are encouraging our teachers, all of our teachers throughout the division, to find opportunities to teach outside for this coming year. I think that will provide a good breath of fresh air, both literally and figuratively, for our students. Lunch will be something that our students at all levels eat in the classroom. We're working on some creative ways to make that happen and make sure that our teachers also get breaks throughout the day to attend to their own needs as well. And so, as I said, the beginning and the end of the day will be staggered departure and arrival. But largely our students in elementary are used to staying within that cohort of students, their peers, their learning buddies, their friends, and their teacher. And so that will look very familiar to them. The classrooms themselves will appear different to our students. When we move into the middle school, again, there will be some similarities and some differences. Just like in the elementary school, our middle school students will also be on a staggered arrival and a staggered departure. We recognize the developmental nature of our students at this level and want to make sure that their schedule is consistent throughout the year. So they will be working on an A-day, B-day schedule, but it won't feel the same as it did in the past. There's going to be a little heavier dose of English and math than there is in science and social studies, and that's been the case in many of our schools. We're going to keep a team approach, which is something that's very familiar to all of our students, where a group of teachers works with a larger group of students and they share them, and that helps them to do team planning and to really address the developmental needs of the students at this level. And so our students will come in and they'll see an 8-block schedule over the course of 2 days, 4 classes on an A day and 4 classes on a B day. But what will be unfamiliar to them is that they won't be traveling to all of those different classes. They're pretty much going to stay put with a cohort of students. And so the teachers will be rotating into them as they need to use lab space or things like that. Modifications will be made. But for approximately 7 out of the 8 blocks, they're going to be with the same group of students. And that's one of our mitigating strategies for our health plan. That last block is going to be a student-selected elective so that our students can start getting a feel for what high school looks like and take some classes that have some specific interest for them. We're also going to be doing some push-in instruction with our elective classes to give students a taste of different things that they might not be able to experience otherwise in this different schedule, but they will have opportunities to learn and grow in a wide variety of areas. With our high school students, our students are going to be on a modified 4x4, and we made this choice in order to limit the mixing of students, but also to reduce the number of teachers and students that have to communicate with each other should we fall back into a phase 2 situation. And so our students, again, at middle and high, staggered arrival, they will go to 4 different classes each day, but they will be the same 4 classes every single day for the first semester, and then we'll make a change in January as we head into second semester. And so what that means for students is our principals are working on master schedules that will try to group students. They might be moving where classrooms are located in their buildings to reduce travel, but travel will be highly orchestrated between those classes. Both middle and high school students will also be eating in their lunches, and we're finding some creative ways to make that happen smoothly, creating that social distance that we need as we need to move throughout the school. And so for the students in our high school, we obviously have some special programs that we need to address, and I'm going to do that after I go through the online learning, because some of those challenges are the same in both environments and some of them do differ. So our face-to-face learning for our high school students, again, is going to be a modified 4x4, 4 classes each day, and then changing classes in January. When we look at the online school, this is not going to look like the spring. An online school has a set schedule for every class, every student. So there will be various points during the day where a student will need to be online for a meeting with a teacher, a whole group instruction, some small group instruction, maybe some one-on-one time as necessary. The students will know what their schedule is, and that will be their schedule from day to day. We understand, though, that screen time is a concern, particularly for our young ones, and we don't want to give the impression that a student will be sitting in front of a computer for 7 or 8 hours a day, 6 or 7 hours a day. There will be plenty of opportunity for students to do learning away from the computer. And so our teachers are going to be structuring and navigating that new world with our students. And so in the elementary school, it's going to look very much like an elementary school schedule. We do have a couple of sample schedules posted online for parents and students to take a look at. One of the questions that we've been getting about elementary students in the online environment is about a learning coach and what might that look like. And so I want to take a moment to talk about that. A learning coach, particularly for our youngest students, are the helping hands at home. They're not teachers. They don't have to develop the curriculum, but what they do need to do is to help that young learner to navigate logging in or making sure that they're arriving on their meetings as scheduled, making sure that they know where the materials are to do the offline activities, communicating back and forth with the teacher when a student might be struggling or need additional help. And so it's that helpmate throughout the day. Different students are going to need different levels of support. Some of it's age related, some of it's maturity related, some of it's familiarity with a computer. And so what might seem like a lot of help in the early weeks might taper off as the student gets used to that learning environment. And so we want to make sure that we're being honest with our families as to what support a student might need at home, particularly at the younger grades. We also acknowledge that teaching literacy in the K1, 2, 3 environment is a challenge. We are looking at our best practices, and we have a team of folks working as to what those best strategies that can translate into an online environment might be for making sure that our students make ample progress with their reading and literacy skills. For the middle and high school students, the students in the online environment are going to follow pretty closely the same schedule that exists in the face-to-face environment. So our middle school students will be having an emphasis on literacy and math. They'll have social studies and science, and then an elective choice. They will see teachers on an every other day basis. And so those times for the team meetings will be published, so the students will know when that opening event might be happening for their third block for the day. And that teacher will then give instructions, and they will do the work, popping back in and out, really implementing the best strategies that we have for online learning. And all of our teachers in the online school will receive professional learning opportunities all the way through the year to make sure that they're developing those skills that are best suited for an online learning environment. At our high school, things are going to get a little bit trickier, but they are going to stay on the same schedule as face-to-face, and that's really important because there are going to be times where our online learners and our face-to-face learners need to come together with a teacher who may be in the online environment or who may be in a face-to-face environment. And we're really looking at some blended opportunities, synchronous and asynchronous, to be able to pull these students together. And that's primarily going to happen in our ACA, our IB, and our AP classes, because we recognize that those classes do need to be year-long in order to prepare the students for the assessments that come at the end of the year. And so we're going to put our best thinking forward, our 4 high school principals, our online principal, and staff at the central office to really coordinate and be creative as to how we can meet those learner needs within that environment. And so, as I said, the online day for the middle and high school students will mirror what we see in the face-to-face. But again, they're not going to be in front of the computer the entire time. The computer is the tool to allow them to communicate, to be a place where information and assignments are stored, but we are going to encourage offline work as well so that students do have those brain breaks, those opportunities for movement. I said that I would talk briefly about some of our special programs, and I've done a little bit of that with the ACA the IB and the AP schedule and how we are going to blend that cross-divisionally to make sure that the needs of our students are met. These are particularly important for our juniors and seniors as they are entering into the more structured part of those programs. You know, in the upcoming year, we may find that we have to limit our non-degree seeking IB students from some IB classes just dependent upon capacity and our ability to offer those to students who are non-degree students. And we may have to limit the number of AP or IB classes that a student can take just by virtue of scheduling and arrangement of that schedule. So we are doing our very best to meet all the needs of those students in a very unique way. It's a modified 4x4 to be able to accomplish this. Some of our other programs that I wanted to talk about involve our CTE. And so we have our Health Sciences Specialty Center held at Hanover High, and we have the Center for Trades and Technology. Both of those programs really have such an emphasis on hands-on learning that we are only able to offer those classes in a face-to-face environment. And we recognize that students who want to choose to go online may feel like they are missing out. And so we're going to try to find some strategies that can catch those students up in those programs when they are more comfortable in a face-to-face environment, whether that's over the summer, whether that's doubling up next year. We don't want a student to lose a quote-unquote spot in either of their programs because they are making a choice to go to the online school for this fall. So while we can't offer those classes in an online setting due to the nature of the classes, we do hope to be able to continue the students' progress in those over the course of the next 12 to 18 months and catch folks up as we can. We do have some CTE limitations in our comprehensive schools as well. Agriculture, horticulture, television, communications programs. Those are also very hands-on and intensive in that way. And so we will not be able to offer those in a online environment. And so we recognize that that does perhaps influence some decisions, and we want to make sure that we work with families and parents who are making those difficult decisions and have those conversations if we need to reassure and to find solutions that might work for each family. And so the other pieces that I really wanted to talk about before I turn it back over to Dr. Gill is about why we made the decision to put together an entire online school. Why didn't we just have virtual options within each of our 25 schools? And the answers are somewhat complex, but also somewhat simple. It has to do with the capacity that we have in our division, making sure that we had good choices for all of our families and for our teachers, and to really protect our teachers from having to manage too many different things in front of them. And so if we had one of our elementary schools, a class of kindergartners, an entire class, not just a class of 25, but the whole grade, and perhaps we only had 10 students who wanted to go virtual, simply moving a teacher over there would overburden the other teachers, but asking a teacher to address the needs of 10 students online while you're also addressing the 11 students in front of you also didn't feel like it would be an effective use of our teachers' skills. And we worried about pulling them in too many different directions. And so a lot of it was based upon efficiency and capacity. And I know that those sound like very clinical words, and what I've heard from the community and what I've heard from teachers and parents alike is, but what about our sense of community? And I think that is resonating with my team quite a bit right now, and we're trying to find some unique and creative ways to have the online school, but also retain some of the connections back to their home school, build a sense of community within that school, make it feel a little bit smaller, make it feel like a community. But we are hearing loud and clear that connection back to the homeschool is vital. And so we're working on strategies to work through that challenge and accept that challenge. The last thing that I also wanted to talk about was we've been getting a lot of questions, as with the governor's conversation this afternoon. Well, what if we end up in phase 2? What will phase 2 look like? And so we're working on sketching that out, and I want to share some things about what phase 2 is, but also what phase 2 is not. And so what phase 2 allows is for students in pre-K through 3rd grade, our English language learners, and our special education students. Those are the only students who are allowed to attend face-to-face in phase 2. And so what would a face-to-face look like for those students? We know that it won't be a full day because we are trying to spread out students in phase 2 to a greater degree. So it won't be a full day program every day. It might be a morning, it might be an afternoon, it might not be 5 days a week, it might be a little bit less than that. And so our students in those environments would also be having work and projects, really rich activities sent home with them to work on between the times that they would be able to come in and meet with their teachers. For students who are in grades 4 through 12, we would be reverting to remote learning. And I don't want people to think that remote learning is what we saw when we were out this past spring. This past spring was emergency learning. And we pulled our resources together to provide our families with the best that we could at the time. But we know that we can do better. And so remote learning is something that our teachers are going to start talking with our students and our families right from the beginning, setting them up for success. There will be daily schedules where students can either dial in by phone or get on a Zoom meet and meet with their teacher throughout the day. There will be concrete activities and grading and new instruction, and it will all be centered around the teacher and the class that that teacher has, rather than being division level implemented instruction. And so that remote learning will happen for our 4th graders through our 12th graders. And as we build out what those schedules might look like, we will certainly share those with you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Greif, and thank you for your leadership. Building a student schedule for any school or for the division is often a 6-month process. Being able to build it over a summer with no model or no playbook is truly an incredible undertaking, and we thank our instructional department for working with our individual schools to do exactly that. It was mentioned there at the end, and I think it bears repeating, that what you are hearing tonight are the basics of our plan under our current operations in phase 3. But it cannot be underscored enough that if data changes, if the governor moves us from phase 3, phase 2, phase 1, or something else, then our plan calls to be responsive and change as well. And so again, we have to be agile, we have to be responsive to the situation at hand. I also want to acknowledge, because we have gotten several questions, excuse me, on why are we meeting in this particular town hall in a virtual environment? Why not face-to-face? And it's a good question, and really it is one simply of capacity. We have approximately 3,500 people on right now between our YouTube channel and our Zoom link. And we simply do not have a place to socially distant and have 3,500 people. And again, we thank you for your engagement. As we transition, there have been understandably a lot of questions about our health plan, about how we are working to make sure that our students and our staff are as safe as possible. Ms. Mandy Baker has led that work in constant collaboration with our health department and our health officials here on staff at the school division. So with that, I'll turn it over to Ms. Baker.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gill. I wanted to begin by saying we understand that no matter what your preference for returning your child to learning, we recognize it isn't an easy decision for everyone. I'm sure many of you have reviewed the health plan we posted on our website. I think it's important to emphasize that student and employee safety and wellness is critical, and we outline numerous mitigation strategies in order to provide as safe an environment as possible for those choosing to return to face-to-face learning. Several themes emerged from your questions, so I'm going to go through those now with you. The first, how will schools handle it if a student who takes off their mask during class? Will the school be providing masks for those that show up to school without one? Excuse me, my response is students who attend school face-to-face have agreed to wear a mask. The exception is for those students who have an IEP or a 504 plan when it's outlined that they cannot wear a mask. Alternative options at the online school will be available for students who choose not to comply with school rules and expectations. Parents are responsible for providing masks for their children. However, masks will be provided to those students who forgot their mask or if a mask becomes damaged. When outside and socially distanced, students and teachers will be able to remove their masks, and teachers will make every effort to leverage outside activities for learning and brain breaks. Another common question, what is the actual plan for when a student or teacher tests positive for COVID-19? Do all students and teachers from that room have to quarantine? So for COVID positive individuals, the case investigator from the health department will conduct an investigation and will determine if any other significant exposures have occurred based upon a determination of close contacts to the original case. The child or teacher with COVID will be removed from the school setting and isolated at home until released by the health department. All identified close contacts, and that's inside and outside of the classroom, will be quarantined at home for the appropriate period of time, which is typically 14 days past the last day of exposure. The students would move to remote learning during the quarantine period. Another question, is it safe to trust parents to do the screenings for temperatures? Why is it not done at school? There are a series of screening questions parents will be responsible for verifying before their child comes to school. But additionally, our teachers and administrators will be trained on signs and symptoms of COVID. Should an employee identify a student who appears ill, they will be sent to the nurse for an assessment. We reviewed a staggered approach for students entering the building to conduct temperature checks, and it just was not feasible to instructional time or the capacity of staff. Additionally, having an elevated temperature is just one possibility of COVID symptoms. Another question, there is a shortage on masks, gloves, wipes, and disinfectants. How will the school acquire these necessary products? Actually, we've been acquiring supplies since last spring and have a strong supply of masks, gloves, face shields, gowns, and cleaning supplies. Speaking of masks, what masks are acceptable? Only the cloth or disposable mouth-nose coverings? Is the plastic shield that comes over the entire face acceptable? The health department has stated that face shields are not a substitute for face coverings. Medical masks or cloth face coverings are required. Cloth face coverings with multiple layers may be more effective than the ones with one layer, such as gaiters. Cloth face coverings should be secured with ties or ear loops. Ear savers are acceptable when worn correctly so that they secure the mask as a tie would. Another question, what will be done if a student forgets their mask or it breaks? As I've shared, we will have masks available for students and staff in case anyone forgets their masks or needs a backup. What happens if my child is in contact with someone outside of school with COVID and needs to quarantine for 2 weeks? Will they be allowed to do virtual for those 2 weeks, or will they be given other materials so that they keep up with school, especially if they're not sick and just need to quarantine? So the answer is, if your child needs to quarantine, they will receive work through their teacher, either through Schoology or by other means, to ensure that he or she is keeping up with the classwork. How will parents be notified when a student or staff member is diagnosed with COVID in the school? At what point are we notified? The answer is, when we have a confirmed positive case, we are required to notify those who may have possible exposure within 24 hours. We will share this information with employees and families of students. This communication will come from the school principal, similar to how we've communicated other viruses in the past. Will Hanover County be providing COVID tests, or will parents be required to have their students tested if they come in contact with a person showing COVID symptoms? We will not be providing COVID tests, and recommendations for testing would come from the health department. Another question, why are teachers who decide to teach virtually at risk of losing their position at their home school? If a teacher is selected for a role in the virtual school, he or she will be given first priority to return to his or her home school for the following year. But as in any year, staffing and teacher placement is dependent upon student enrollment, so we cannot guarantee going back to that home school from year to year. I think we need to acknowledge that even though we are planning for the virtual school for the 2021 school year, this may not be a one-year opportunity. We may see virtual learning as a continued choice. Another question, are the teachers that are teaching face-to-face volunteering for that, or are they being forced? I am very concerned about their mentality toward the students if they are being forced to be in the classroom. So no, teachers are not being forced into the face-to-face environment. In fact, at this time, only 5% of our teachers have requested to move to the virtual environment, and only another 3% have said they might want to move. Although I will say when we did a survey earlier, a month or so ago, asking teachers if they were willing to do virtual, about 50% of our teachers said that they would be willing. Another question, will every fever require a negative COVID test? We suggest that every child who has a fever be seen by a physician for an assessment. All students must be free of any illness symptoms and fever-free for at least 24 hours without medication before returning to school. Dr. Gill, if I can just, I think I have 2 more questions to go over. A very popular question was, can you please describe the sick room? So a student who's not feeling well would go to the nurse's office and be triaged outside of the clinic. We don't want a student who may have COVID symptoms entering the clinic where we also have well visits. If the nurse is concerned about the student's symptoms, the student would be escorted to the sick area. The sick area will be monitored by an adult who can stand in the doorway or completely across the room while the parent is called for pickup. The adult monitoring the sick room does not need to have close contact and should not have close contact with a student. And full PPE will be supplied to include a mask, gown, shield, and gloves. And then lastly, what PPE specifically will be supplied to teachers to ensure their safety? Again, we are supplying a cloth face mask to all of our employees. We're also providing face shields, gloves, gowns as needed for specific student populations. We also will have hand sanitizing stations within each building and ample cleaning supplies available. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Baker. Like our other areas, personnel alone during a quote-unquote normal year is a major undertaking, as we need to staff for all of our positions before the opening of school. That is taking place along with liaising with the health department and submission and refinement constantly of our health plan on behalf of those we serve, and we're thankful for that. As we transition now, we're going to hear from Ms. Terry Stone, our Assistant Superintendent for Business and Operations. There have been a lot of questions as it pertains to technology. That is understandable as we talk about virtual learning. There have also been an abundance of questions about transportation, the cleanliness of facilities, custodial. Ms. Stone oversees all of those operations and many more. And so I'll turn it over to her for her question and answer session. Ms. Stone.
Thank you, Dr. Gill. So since I have such a variety of topics, I'm going to jump right in. In regards to technology, we've heard from many parents what is the timing for the Chromebook receipt. Our division capital improvement plan for the current fiscal year included the purchase of Chromebooks for all of our middle school students only. And the process for making that purchase was underway when we closed in March. Unfortunately, the closure did delay our process some. However, that order was placed in the spring. Then on June 24th, Hanover County allocated $4.1 million of CARES funding to the division. $3.2 million of those funds were allocated for high school and grades 3 through 5 student devices. So the orders for those devices were not placed until the last week of June. Due to the national demand for student devices and a shortage of internal computer components, there's a significant delay in the supply chain. We were told that the first order will be received in late August and will be available for the school year. The second order of devices, we're hopeful, will come soon after, but are told that they could be as late as December. So the first shipment will be allocated to the online students, And then the second order will be distributed to the face-to-face students in grades 3 through 5 and middle and high. Once all the new devices are received, the existing devices in our schools will be available for distribution for grades K through 2. The Chromebooks generally arrive ready for distribution, and they will be distributed from the zoned school site. So in the meantime, will students be able to use their own laptops or tablets until the devices are delivered? Yes, they will on a temporary basis. And our FAQ site that we mentioned several times earlier has actually the specs that you would need for a home device to use that, for your student to use that. Next we have, will hotspots be available before school starts? The CARES funding that was allocated by the county included $100,000 for temporary hotspots. HCPS will provide those hotspots to the extent that funding covers. But we have to keep in mind that hotspots only work where there's a strong cellular signal that to support the internet and video-based learning. We know that there's some areas of our county where a hotspot would not work. But the hotspots will be distributed based upon the funding and will be distributed based upon need. Next, will there be a technology help desk? Yes, there will be a help desk during the school day. Students will primarily enter their requests through a portal, but we will also have a telephone number that they can call if they need help. Will the students no longer have access to technology in the classrooms? Depending upon when the Chromebooks arrive, we may have to allocate some of the devices in the schools out to students. However, we do expect that there will be some labs that remain intact and available for use. We will have a cleaning and disinfection protocol that will have to be followed if those labs are used. If a parent chooses face-to-face due to insufficient technology or internet access in the home, what will happen if we go into a 100% virtual phase? In that situation, paper packets will be available to all students that need those. Next, we have the area of transportation. And I know that this is of interest to many of you. And we've heard, why isn't transportation available for all face-to-face students? And what we've shared is that on a typical year, about 60% of our students take the transportation service. Unfortunately, that will be greatly limited this year because we can only have one student per seat. So if 60% of our students typically ride the bus, and now we'll have one student as opposed to on average 2, and I know that differs by bus, then that means that within our typical 2-hour range for running routes in the morning and 2 hours in the afternoon, we could only transport about 30% of our students. Because we typically do not start bus stops before 7 a.m. and we just have a certain amount of time to get the students to school. We will conduct double backs to the greatest extent that we can, but in the end, we do have a time limitation to ensure that students are in the building, and then we also have a physical capacity limitation in regards to how many students that can be on the bus. We are currently, parents are able to opt in or request transportation service. And once we receive all of those numbers, we will start to look at and determine what is the extent that we can provide transportation. Unfortunately, we can't tell you that now because we have to know specifically which students and the physical address of their bus stop before we can determine how many that we can provide transportation service to. In the end, transportation will be based upon need, students with disabilities, age, and mileage from school. So how soon will we know if we're granted transportation for our child? The transportation department will immediately start analyzing all of the requests, and the deadline is July of 31st. And then they will start making bus assignments and communicating with families starting August 14th. So we'll do that as quickly as possible. We had some other transportation questions such as, what if I only need afternoon transportation? Or my bus rides a different bus in the morning than the afternoon. Unfortunately, to the extent that a student is riding the one bus in the morning and a different one in the afternoon, that leaves a seat available that's not being utilized. So to maximize the greatest number of students on a route, priority will be given to students that use the same route in the morning and the afternoon. We're not ruling it out completely, but we have to address those ones that use the same route first. We need to know if a bus will be available before we can make a decision. And if the bus is not available, can we opt into school online? We've talked about some of the time frame in regards to notification back in bus service. And yes, if you demonstrate that you did apply for bus service and it was not available, then we will work with you for a late request for online school. Will the school start and stop time change? Yes, the instructional day will run from 8:10 to 2:15 for elementary and from 9:15 to 3:30 for secondary. Due to transportation capacity constraints, student arrival and departure for both buses and parent transportation will be staggered over 30 to 40 minutes. This allows for those double backs, and it also allows for us to stagger families that are dropping off and hopefully to address some of those traffic issues. Will buses continue to run for daycares? Unfortunately, we're going to have to meet the needs of those home students first. Many daycares have their own transportation, and they're certainly allowed to perform drop-offs and pickups at the school. But again, we will meet the transportation needs of our students that are returning to home first. Will each school have someone directing traffic to accommodate the increased traffic volume? We, as I mentioned, will stagger the traffic to address that. Unfortunately, there's no additional funding to hire additional traffic guards. So we're hoping that we can address it through staggered traffic, staggered times for drop-off. What are the plans moving into extracurricular activities and athletics? And what are the plans for sports and extracurricular? And can online students participate? Athletics will follow the VHSL guidelines based upon the specific phase. And then we're also working on the logistics for other extracurricular activities, but we have to ensure that we're following the health plan guidelines. Yes, online students may participate in athletics and extracurricular activities for their zone school. However, transportation will not be provided. Also, there were some questions about the ventilation systems and the age of our buildings. Regardless of the age of the school, that doesn't necessarily dictate the age of the HVAC system. All of our systems are monitored through a building automation system, and that really helps us to understand. It shows us what is the fresh air intake, and that depends upon the number of occupants within the building, but it typically ranges between 15 to 25%. Those systems are monitored and adjusted as necessary. And bathroom usage. Custodial hours will be altered to provide more coverage during the day. This will result in more frequent bathroom cleaning. All staff will participate in wiping down high-touch surfaces, and fixtures in the bathroom will be marked to encourage social distancing, and we will ensure that the number of students in the bathroom is limited over time, or during one time. And Dr. Gill, I have made it through most of my questions.
Thank you so much, Ms. Stone, for your leadership as well. I think everybody can see that whether it is in facilities and transportation, our custodial efforts, technology, personnel, certainly instruction, our health plan, there are many moving parts, and many, if not most of these, have never been accomplished before, have never been undertaken. There's never been a need. And so the efforts are many. The effort to put it together is great, and we have the staff to do it, and they're doing a fantastic job. We're going to transition in our second half of this meeting to questions submitted tonight. Again, the questions you heard our 3 assistant superintendents covered were submitted in advance. And I want to acknowledge before we get started that it would be, as we see there's about 3,500 or more joining us this evening, and I know you all have a lot of questions. It would be an impossibility to answer each and every one. We're going to answer as many as we possibly can. We again invite you to continue to check back on our frequently asked questions, our FAQ, and our Return to Learn link that you can find on our Hanover County Public Schools website. It will be updated often, and again, as there are new developments, we will communicate regularly with you. I need to also acknowledge that you may have questions both tonight and throughout as we continue to plan that we will admit we do not have the answer to. We're not going to have the answer to all questions as we continue to work through this process, but as we do it together, we will find the solutions, and we're committed to that. With that, we're going to open up the chat link, and we will go in order, and the appropriate assistant superintendent will take each question. And so I'm going to go ahead and get started here, and we will get as many as we can in the next 40 minutes or so. All right, our first question is from Stephanie. If my child is enrolled in the online school for the fall, are they 100% guaranteed a spot at their home school if we choose to go face-to-face in the spring? Ms. Greif.
Yes, we are confident that we will be able to restaff and reshuffle. What we would do is in the weeks preceding our winter break, ask parents to engage in a similar activity that we're asking them to do right now, to give us notice that they intend for their child to either move from the virtual school to face-to-face or from face-to-face to virtual. And so we will make those accommodations, and we will work with staffing to also, as Ms. Baker said earlier, for staff who wishes to return, if there are enrollment numbers that support that at mid-year, we would even do that.
Thank you, Ms. Greif. Our next question is a concern about how we are going to ensure safety during lunches. It was mentioned about students often eating lunch in the classroom. Sometimes there may be other things available, such as even outside, but a concern, obviously, a mask has to be off in order to eat in the classroom, and reference creative measures and what some of those things might look like. Ms. Baker.
So our goal is to have a 3-foot distancing between all desks. And during the lunch period, the student would not have movement around the classroom, and the lunch time frame would be limited as well. So those are the 2 mitigating factors for us trying to keep everyone safe during that time period.
Thank you. For face-to-face learning, it was mentioned that elementary resource classes, specifically PE, art, and music, will be pushed into the classroom, and that's correct. What about the library? Will students be able to go and check out books? Will librarians be able to collaborate and teach lessons? What will that look like? Ms. Greif?
Yes to all of those. Students will be able to check out books. Librarians will assist with projects in the classroom and with research. They have been working very hard and have almost completed their guidance document for how we can safely check out materials and receive those back from our students. We are committed to a literacy-rich environment.
Next one, again, is more kind of in the administration, but also classroom management. Will mask wearing by students be enforced? Ms. Greif?
Yes.
Yes, like anything, that is an expectation, but certainly this one would be even more heightened because there is a safety component. Our administrators will work with our teachers, and that expectation, if you are going to go in a face-to-face environment, the expectation is for all to be wearing masks. Certainly there are a few exceptions to that when outside time, brain breaks, but again, in the confines of the building, the mask will be enforced. Kind of a subpart to that, Ms. Greif, is what about IEP students where it may be a part of the IEP, the mask may be a condition, could be a 504 as well, that the mask may be a barrier. Ms. Greif, actually, or Ms. Baker.
So for those students who, due to a 504 or IEP, cannot wear a mask, they will be positioned 6 feet away from all others so that they can be socially distanced within the classroom.
Thank you. A concern about student who may have been working towards an advanced diploma, and because AP classes are not offered through the virtual learning, would that mean that you would have to forfeit the opportunity for an advanced diploma if they chose to learn in a virtual environment, Ms. Greif?
So no, AP classes and advanced classes are available in the online school. We're actually looking for creative options to extend our AP classes throughout the entire year rather than just offering them in a semester 4x4 format. So there would be no barrier for continuing work towards an advanced diploma.
The next one is very similar. Could you talk a little bit more about what electives will look like for students in the online school?
So electives in the online school will look like core classes a little bit in the online school, in that there will be modules and projects, face-to-face opportunities with their teachers, group projects that can be done in an online environment. So we anticipate that the electives that we have been able to transport into the online school will continue to look similar to those back in our regular program, in our face-to-face program, I should say, with modifications for best instructional practices to be found in a virtual environment.
Thank you. There is some question about what the technology plan will look like for kids younger than grade 3. We talked about the Chromebook rollout will ultimately be for grades 3 through 12. What does that look like for students in pre-K through 2nd grade?
Sure, and once we distribute those Chromebooks to the other grade levels, then we will have the flexibility to take some of the devices that are currently in the school and allocate those to the lower grades for use.
Thank you. It was mentioned, I believe, during Ms. Baker's update that currently only 5% of our teachers have opted in for online teaching. Originally, I know we have had several reach out and express concern that teachers would not be able to be accommodated who wanted to teach in the online environment. Right now, actually, the opposite is true, where we have had a very small number percentage-wise. There are still a couple of days left in order for teachers to request that. But this question is, if there are not enough teachers to meet the number of students who have chosen online, what does the process look like for having teachers in order? And really the question is, will there be enough teachers? The short answer on that is yes, but could we talk about the process to fill the online school?
Ms. Baker, do you want to take that or you want me to?
Sure. I was unmuting.
Okay.
So we feel pretty confident. I did share that earlier when we sent a survey out to our teachers, the question was, are you willing to work virtually? And about 50% of our teachers said they were. So what Ms. Greif and her team will do is put together what a master schedule will look like to see what subject matters that or subject areas or grade levels that we need. And then we can reach out to those teachers who said they might be interested as well. We really aren't concerned with filling the online teacher vacancy.
Thank you. We're getting several very individual questions, nuanced situations, several specifically with students with IEPs. And so, Ms. Greif, maybe it'd be best just to kind of make a general statement, because each situation that I'm seeing here is very particular to one family or one student. What would be, for those who have questions regarding their student who may have an IEP or a 504 in a very nuanced situation, to ask questions on how that might be implemented? Could you address that?
Absolutely. So our SEAC, our Special Education Advisory Committee, actually met last night, and Diane Brown presented to them some of our processes that will be in place. And I've asked Ms. Brown to go ahead and build out that presentation into some FAQs that will be useful to our parents. And so we'll be posting those within the next day or so. But the basic answer is that we're going to rely on our IEP teams to make the best choices and decisions for our students. We'll make sure that their services are intact and can be provided for. And we'll look at the best accommodations for the different environments that our students will be learning in. And so it is very, very individualized, but please look on the FAQ in the next day or so, and there will be some more specific information there.
Thank you, Ms. Greif. In a K through 5 online situation, if you have more than one child, how are you supposed to be at both virtually? I'm going to assume that question is in reference to being a learning coach and supporting both virtually. I hope that I'm interpreting that correctly.
I interpret that the same way, Dr. Gill, and we recognize that it's a challenge for families, and creating that balance of, you know, helping two students simultaneously. We are working to build the skills of our students as we move through this so that they can become more independent. But ultimately, that is something that within your family, we need you to consider what that support might look like. Do they need to be in the same room? Do they need to be one on your left and one on your right? Will they work better in separate rooms? Can you work with the teachers to identify the absolute times when you might need to be with one child over another? And so those are going to be some very individual conversations, and really reliant upon the degree of assistance that your child might need.
Thank you. Next question is about how the specialty center will be addressed. That was addressed earlier. There's some concern about exercise during the day. I'm going to assume this is in the face-to-face environment, especially since we'll be doing kind of push in. And can you talk a little bit about, it was mentioned very briefly, but the opportunities for students to have both brain and physical breaks between classes, that it won't just be 6-7 hours in the same place. Ms. Greif, can you?
Absolutely. Physical activity is essential for all of our students, and Adam Ottstadt and his health and PE team are working to create best practices all the way up. So we're finding some creative ways to pull the students out of their classroom to utilize that outdoor space as much as possible to gain some physical activity, recognizing that students aren't going to be in the locker rooms changing out. So we know with middle and high school students, getting sweaty might not be the thing that they want to do at 11 o'clock in the morning. So just having those opportunities to get some physical exercise, to get that outdoor time, to, you know, check your heart rate, what's your hydration. There's really quite some creative learning ways that we can put into place with these structures, while absolutely attending to the human needs of our children.
Absolutely. It's not simply the academic, but the whole child that we are trying to develop. The physical activity is a key part of that. Next question is it official? Are they going back to school? And I'll go ahead and address that one. The plan calls to be responsive based on what phase the Commonwealth is operating under. Under phase 3, we have a 2-choice plan for a virtual option and a face-to-face option. If that were to change, we will adapt as well. Again, if we went to phase 2, our plan looks different. That was rolled out 2 weeks ago. You can find the full plan on our website. So yes, learning will take place. How that learning will look will be in response to the state situation and what guidelines we are operating under. Those guidelines, again, are subject to change, whether through the CDC, the Virginia Department of Health, and now the Department of Labor and Industry. And so we are subject to all of those regulations, and we will be responsive as changes may occur. The next one is a question I've heard often myself. When will we know what electives will be available?
So on the website, there is a list of electives that will not be offered in the in the online school. The other electives are open at this point, and we will be using course requests that the students did in the spring to create schedules. Now, it may be that a particular elective is scheduled to be offered second semester and not first semester. And so, but that is sort of part of the master scheduling process that we do every year. It's just going to look a little different in the 4x4. I do want to take a moment to talk about music and performing arts education, because I didn't cover that at the beginning. And it is something that is very important in our community. We are recognized over and over again for being a community of music, of excellence for music education. And we want to make sure that continues for our students. And so right now we are working on some very creative options. Barry Flo has has been working diligently to find opportunities for the face-to-face instruction, to perhaps have some asynchronous components as well as some face-to-face. We recognize that right now there's not that comfort level for performance within smaller classrooms. And so we're looking at what extracurricular opportunities that might also then draw from our students who are taking their music classes online. To be able to be spaced out in the afternoon, before school, larger spaces, outdoor spaces. And as we get more guidance through research and study that has been coming in slowly this summer, we'll be able to make the best decisions for our students to continue that performing arts tradition in our county in a very safe way.
Thank you. The parent asks, if I've already signed my child up for online, but now I want to switch to face-to-face, can I still do that?
Yes, please contact your home school, school counseling office.
Did you say that high school students would be changing classes? We talked about kind of what the middle school teaming model would look like, the elementary push-in. Can you kind of quickly talk about the 4x4 and what that would look like from changing classes?
Yeah, so students would have the same consistent schedule day after day. And so they would rotate from their first block to their second, second to third, third to fourth each day. And so we are looking to our principals to find creative ways to cohort some of our classes so that there isn't quite as much mixing. But yes, students will be traveling across the day into 4 different classes.
Getting a few different questions about class sizes and what class sizes will look like. Is there a class size limit? Also seeing questions related to, is the class size in the virtual school going to be larger than the class size in face-to-face? Can we talk in general about class sizes, and will there be any discrepancy between the face-to-face model and the virtual model?
So I think we have to be honest that from a pragmatic standpoint, our class sizes in the face-to-face are going to have to take into consideration the actual physical space of our classrooms. And as Ms. Baker said, our goal is to get to 3 feet of space between desks. And so that will necessitate smaller classes in our face-to-face. It will necessitate our converting spaces, our cafeterias, our gyms, to provide for that room that we need for our students. And so because we're not adding additional staff, the class sizes in our online school will have to go up. And so we are still very aware of what our state standards are for class sizes. But yes, the necessity of the face-to-face environment and putting in mitigation strategies will create different class sizes in those 2 environments.
But still will be holding to the state guidelines.
Yes.
For both environments. I do want to make sure that everybody knows that. It would not be a situation where an online teacher had 50 in a class.
Correct.
Next question is, what are the times for the online middle school? And I think need to reiterate, we have sample schedules on our website, but the times for the online school are going to mirror our in-person school as well. So, and that's at all levels. A question regarding parking passes. Will parking passes be waived for students who want to drive to school this year?
And we have not explored that topic yet. I think it may, pardon?
I said that's a new one. That's a question we've seen a lot of these questions.
I appreciate
admittedly a new one.
These are great ideas. And I think certainly if we have additional capacity within the parking lots at particular schools, and we know that we have did not have sufficient transportation capacity, then certainly that is something we can consider. I will tell you that 50% of those refunds go into the general fund, and they do support our driver's ed program.
Will there be kindergarten orientation this year, as there have been in the past, so the kindergartners can get familiar with their teachers?
There will be orientation, but it will likely be virtual and very creative if I know our elementary principals as I do.
And they do an outstanding job, and I agree with your assessment. If a child has an articulation or a speech language disorder, how will the county work to accommodate the child with the mask requirement?
That will definitely be a conversation for the IEP team.
Again, getting a few kind of nuanced questions. We'll take a few of these. Our son is registered for an elective that will not be offered at the online school. If we do register him for the online school for the fall semester, would he still be registered for that elective in the spring? So if he, assuming went face-to-face, so that option would still remain open to him. And that would certainly be something that could potentially affect a lot of students.
Yes, and as master schedules are created, that will be a consideration. We're not going to take a class off of a student's schedule in the fall, knowing that there might be other decisions made in the spring. But nor would I want to guarantee, to be honest, that the class would be available in the spring. We will certainly do our best to create as many opportunities for as many students as we can.
Who will the online principal be?
Do you want to take that one, Dr. Gill?
A recommendation will be made to the school board at their next meeting. Actually, I believe it's already taken place. Has it not? Yes. I'm sorry, I'm getting a little bit behind myself. The online principal will be Dr. Dana Gresham. And Dr. Gresham has extensive experience at both the elementary and high school level and is a current director here at the school board office, and she's really going to be doing double duty. Will parents be assigned a specific time for drop-off and pickup?
Yes, we talked about the fact that that will occur over a 30 or 40-minute time period. So ideally, we would assign time slots to families, potentially based upon last name or something, so that we can distribute that traffic over that time.
For seniors, what happens to class rank if a senior decides to move to the virtual school?
There should be no change in that because the student will remain associated with their home school and will be ranked with all of the students in that school.
Question about world language. Those who have signed up for world language electives in middle school still have the option in face-to-face and virtual.
Yes, that is our goal right now. We're working on some tricky pieces of that schedule, but we're committed to finding solutions.
Can twins be enrolled in the same online class?
So as an aunt of twins, I completely understand the necessity of that question. And yes, we will do our very best to make that happen so that a learning coach can have one on the left and one on the right.
What is the plan for kids in the RIPK? That would be the Reverse Inclusion Preschool Program. Ms. Greif?
So we're moving forward with that program with a slight delay for our typically developing peers. We want to make sure that our students with disabilities have opportunities with their teachers first to really learn some good social behaviors before we bring in some typically developing students. And so we're anticipating that will probably be a delay of about a quarter.
As we have talked about staggered drop-off schedules and staggered bus schedules, we're getting kind of some specific questions. If I need to drop off my middle schoolers early because I work at 8 a.m., will I be allowed to do that? And I guess, again, if you were assigned a specific time and it doesn't work with your personal work schedule, what might be the process? Maybe a more general way of asking that.
Well, and unfortunately, we do not have a lot of flexibility because students will report directly to their classroom when they arrive at school. There's no longer a communal space where they go to the cafeteria and wait. So there will be a 30-minute window for arriving, but that will be the only time that's available because we have to ensure the teachers are there.
How will school fees be handled this year?
We have an online system for paying fees, and so certainly we will encourage parents to use that system, pay those fees online. And we will work with any families where they are unable to do that.
Can you elaborate a little bit more on trade programs or career and technical education? And again, for the benefit of all, we certainly have our trade center, which a lot of people think of when they think of career and technical education. But that's really only about 7 programs. The bulk of our career and technical education programs are in our comprehensive high schools, over 80 in fact. So can you address, Ms. Greif, maybe kind of our comprehensive schools as well as the Hanover Center for Trades and Technology?
So in our comprehensive schools, in the face-to-face environment, we will still be able to offer our ag classes, our business and marketing classes. On a modified 4x4, students will take the class at the beginning of the year and finish it in January, or they will start the class in January and finish it at the end of the year. These single block classes will be scheduled the same as any other type of class that we have in our face-to-face environment. When we shift over to our classes at the Health Science Specialty Center and at the Trade Center, those classes are often longer in duration and count as a 2-credit or a 3-credit class. And so the time spent in the classroom has to be equitable. It has to equal those credits that we are awarding. And so for students in those programs in the semester that they're taking the class, they may be at the Trade Center for 3 blocks and have 1 academic class on their schedule as well. And then because we are on that 4x4, the following semester, they wouldn't have Trade Center on their schedule at all.
If I have a student who is in advanced math in middle school, how is that going to work since students are in a cohort or in a team, as we like to call that? And again, we understand that teaming works in most scenarios, but we do have students who are in advanced level classes. So how would that work?
So we're looking at a few different options. One is to cluster our students within those cohorts and differentiate the instruction. If we need to tap into some of our online resources for students who are even farther advanced, we will be able to do that as well.
Not all classes use textbooks, but for those that do, will online students be issued textbooks?
Most of our textbooks actually have online resources already available to us. So our first choice will be to use those online resources and then as needed, distribute textbooks along the way.
Will driver's education be offered this year?
Yes, we are continuing to offer driver's education. In fact, we've done our health PE 10 over the summer. The component that becomes a little bit trickier is the behind the wheel, and that's not actually required for our driver's ed classes. It's a service that we offer to our families, and we are beginning that service back up with our students. And we will continue to offer that service using appropriate mitigation measures as is allowed by the state.
If we choose face-to-face the second half of the school year, I'm assuming that implies that they would choose virtual for the first half. How does that work transitioning back in? And let me maybe take a stab at this myself, and then I'll turn it over to you, Ms. Greif. From an academic standpoint, because we are transitioning to the 4x4 model, it really, at our secondary classes, you're really starting fresh anyway, academically. But I think the other thing that we can talk about is what that might look at the younger grade level when you've been out and now are joining a class face-to-face, but also not just the academic, but the social emotional, which we know for all students is going to be a big area of concentration for us to make sure that the needs of the whole child are being met. So Ms. Greif, can you kind of talk about that maybe at the younger level from an academic as well as kind of the social emotional component?
So I think that you've hit the nail on the head, really focusing on the social emotional and recreating those relationships that students need to have with their teachers and their new peers. I have found that our schools are fantastic about embracing students whenever they come. And I know that with this transition happening at a very set point and with the possibility of groups of children coming back and forth, that our school counselors are really going to take the lead on how we manage these transitions. From an academic standpoint, I think you're right at the high school level, because we're starting brand new classes, we shouldn't have any issues. And because we are committed to pacing our online school and our face-to-face schools the same in terms of the way that our courses unfold through the year, there should not be any hiccups.
One class that hasn't been addressed, you've addressed so many, but one that hasn't been is JROTC. Will that be available this year?
JROTC is definitely going to be available in the face-to-face. We are still having some conversations with our partners in those programs to see what is allowable in an online environment?
A question we've been asked earlier today. This is actually the second town hall we've had. We had one just for our faculty and staff earlier today, and this was a question we saw often. How many students so far have registered for the virtual environment? I actually checked on this about midday today, so it's probably changed a little bit. We did a survey, as many of you knew and participated in, because our response rate was fantastic, to kind of get a sense of that. And based on that survey a month or so ago, we estimated somewhere around 4,100 students would participate in the virtual environment. We have a little over 17,000 students, to put that in perspective. So, getting close to a quarter. As of about midday today, we were looking at around 3,300 students had opted for the virtual environment. And so with still a couple of days to go, or really the last half of today and a couple of more days, we feel that estimate is pretty good. That, we're looking, we'll probably end up somewhere around 25% of our student body opting for virtual and 75% for face-to-face. Ms. Greif, any update on that? That, again, was probably around noon today that I checked.
I have not checked those numbers since you have.
I'm going to, again, take a guesstimate and say that it's probably going to be in the neighborhood of 75-25. That being said, you could have heard something tonight that, would cause you to change your mind one way or the other. We already saw one question that said, I've changed my mind and want to go face-to-face. And certainly one of the reasons we're doing this is to help each family decide. Why did Hanover County apply for a variance for social distancing? Under what conditions would that be a concern? Ms. Baker, I believe you're probably best equipped for that.
Yes, we knew that returning to a face-to-face environment, we would not be able to adhere to a 6-foot distancing. So our goal is 3 feet, but I will say on a school bus, our plan is to seat one child per seat, unless they are siblings in the house where they can sit next to each other in the same seat.
Thank you. If you are a senior and opt for a virtual environment, would you still be able to graduate with your homeschool?
100%. You are still connected with that school for extracurriculars, athletics. We're going to try to find other ways to keep you connected. Our principals are already thinking about how we make sure that we honor our students who are in the online school in school publications like the yearbook. So that's very much on the minds of our staff in our school, is to make sure that these students still feel connected and they will graduate with their class.
Question about a student who wants to go face-to-face, but then does not feel safe. What supports would be there for that student?
So I think that we would have to start by understanding what the safety concerns are and work from that to see if we can do some problem solving with the family, with the classroom teacher, with the school. We always try to solve problems at the building level first before escalating them to the division level. But if we need to, we certainly will step in at the division side to try to find some solutions for that family.
Is the person who will be in the sick area going to be an RN, a registered nurse, or an LPN, a licensed practicing nurse?
So neither. We have one licensed clinical person per building. The person that's overseeing the sick area is not going to be caring for the child. That person will be supervising that child until the parent picks them up. If there's any type of medical concern with the child who's in the sick area, then the RN would come down to the sick area. Truly, the person who's monitoring this room can stand in a doorway if they so choose.
If a student commits to virtual school now, but then after committing, the state moves us back to phase 2, again, before school starts, can the student do virtual learning with his or her normal classmates rather than being part of the online school? And I think, again, it's an interesting question, because it would only occur if phase 2 happens between today and September the 8th, but that is possible. And I think, again, would it be part of just the online that was originally going to be face-to-face, or would it be enrolled in the online school? Ms. Greif, I was looking for you on that one. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I thought you were making a statement. I apologize.
No, that was still the question.
Right. So I want to make sure that I understand the question. So could you repeat it again?
Certainly. So the question is, if a student has opted for the virtual school over face-to-face, but between now and September the 8th, the governor orders us back to phase 2. Therefore, most of the students who are in face-to-face would also be learning in a remote environment and in a virtual environment. And so the question is, would the person who had enrolled in the virtual school then be allowed to join his or her classmates who would have been face-to-face in that environment as opposed to be in the virtual school?
Okay, so that's a tricky one because a lot of it has to do with the timing of that order and whether we have an indication from the governor that that would be a long-standing order or a short-term mitigation strategy. And so I think that we would have to a degree, cross that bridge when we get there, depending upon how far down the road of master scheduling we had done in the 2 environments. And again, whether we felt like this was something that the governor was going to be doing for 4 weeks, or is this something that the governor anticipates lasting until Thanksgiving or later?
Right. It certainly is going to be circumstantial. If it was something that was not defined, that could only take place a week or 2, that would be difficult to have students going back and forth, back and forth. If it was ordered for a long period of time, that would be a different situation. So again, it's very contextual. How about middle school sports? How are they impacted by the Virginia High School League guidelines? You've probably seen, and it probably bears repeating here too, decisions for sports are not made by local school divisions. That is made by the Virginia High School League, the governing body for public school athletics in the Commonwealth. In Hanover and many other localities, we have chosen to have our middle school sports follow the Virginia High School League guidelines, even unrelated to COVID. So yes, the plan right now would be that middle school sports would follow any guidance issued by the VHSL to high school sports. So we move on. Efficiency and capacity were mentioned in terms of options for classroom versus virtual. How do these concepts apply to transportation? In the past, I felt that schools encourage busing due to infrastructure limitations and said as many as 60% have done so. Now we're being encouraged not to use the buses, and that is true. Which begs the question, how will the infrastructure handle extraordinary demand when it is stretched by ordinary demand? And again, a lot of that talks about is really getting at the capacity for parent drop-off and the traffic flow. And that really speaks to our staggered approach, but maybe that can be reemphasized.
Sure, and so we're looking at a staggered approach, but I don't want to suggest that it would be perfect day 1. And once we determine the number of virtual students by schools, because some schools have more difficulty with that drop-off and pickup than others, but we will measure the number of students and just go from there. We do not have the perfect plan necessarily, but we will have to work towards it and make it as good as we can.
If my family needs a hotspot, and those were mentioned earlier, or MiFi, how do I go about getting one?
Once we have them in hand, then we will develop another opportunity to opt in or make that request similar to what you've done for online and for transportation.
I've seen 2 questions now about gifted and talented classes, and will they be available online? Will GT classes be available online?
We will continue to provide GT services online just as we do in the face-to-face through clustering, through differentiation, and we'll continue to work at our upper level of high schools in those classes which aren't necessarily designated gifted and talented, but do provide our students with advanced studies opportunities.
We're just about out of time. We're going to do a couple of more questions and then we will wrap up. Is Virtual Virginia going to be the platform used for the virtual school?
No, we'll continue to use Schoology. We have signed an agreement with Virtual Virginia where we will have access to their materials, but they use a very different learning platform called Canvas. And so we've been migrating their information and their rich instructional materials over for our own teachers to customize and use within our learning management system.
Can you explain a little bit more about what is meant by, quote, the term modified 4x4?
So we use the term modified 4x4 because it allows for some stretching of classes across an entire year. And so that modification applies to our AP, our IB, our ACA classes, which do need a full year format. And so if we were in a strict 4x4, it would mean that a student might take AP US History in the fall, but the College Board doesn't allow for testing until the spring. And so we have been working to find that modification that will allow those students to have a year-long experience in those types of classes.
This is going to be the last question we have an opportunity for this evening. If a student at the online school in the fall semester is taking an AP class, and then in the spring semester moves to in-person, will he or she stay in the same virtual AP class in the spring semester or be placed into another in-person class in the second semester?
I can't answer that with certainty as those blended schedules are really still being created. What I will say is that there is a lot of cross-divisional work on this. And so I'd love to give you a concrete answer, but I just don't have it right now.
And that's a very fair response. And I think probably one that is appropriate actually to end on, because we don't have all of the answers. And, you know, the phrase building a plane while you're flying it has been used and makes us chuckle, but there is a lot of truth to that because nobody has built this type of plane in this type of manner before, and we have to acknowledge that. We got to as many questions as we could tonight. We will continue to update our frequently asked questions. We will communicate regularly if there are any changes, whether they are at the state level, whether they are at the school board level, or anything else that is pertinent that we feel that you need to know. I certainly hope that this has been helpful, informational for you, and has helped to guide your family's decision-making, understanding that the choice has to be one that is right for the families, and we respect that. That what is right for one family may not be right for others. Our focus will continue to be on the health and safety of all those who come into our building, students, staff, community, as well as the development, again, of the whole child, not only academic, but the physical, the social, emotional. And we take, again, that responsibility seriously, and it is a pleasure to serve, and we thank you for joining us, and thank you for allowing us to do so and entrusting us to serve your greatest resource, which is your children. Thank you again for attending, and we wish you all a very good night.